Hi, this is Tami Neilson, and you're listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
Losing my mind from losing your love, raising my eyes to the skies above.
1 minute it's so grateful to be home with my kids, and the next minute so exhausted being home with my kids. The highs and lows.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this new record, but we're talking about it in a whole new sense now, because I guess there's one award you're going to win this year. It's the Unfortunate Timing Award.
Oh, God, tell me about it. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it literally came out like 2 weeks before all of everything started to unravel. Yeah, it was crazy because the month leading up to the album launch, and releasing an album, I mean, first you have the writing of it 18 months before, and then you have the recording of it a year before, and then so on and so on, and you have your teams all over the world working really hard to make it a success. And my publicist in the States and my record label and everybody just helped to create this incredible momentum. And when the album came out, it was just, everything I kind of hoped and dreamed it would be, with incredible reviews and just all of these huge opportunities opening up. And then literally overnight, it just all disintegrated,
Yeah.
It's been a real thing that, I think I've just had to accept that it's a loss that you have to grieve. Just like anything, the music business is something that you work on your entire life, to kind of get to that point. So you do have to kind of allow yourself to have a cry and grieve over the loss of those dreams and those plans and all that work, just as we're all doing right now.
Yeah, that's true. I believe interest in America was really starting to brew, and this had the potential to really be a great breakthrough for you over there.
Yes.
I mean, what can you do to try and maintain that momentum without physically being there?
That's the thing I think that we're all kind of scrambling to figure out. I was saying to my husband the other night, I don't know if you've seen the Sherlock series with Benedict Cumberbatch. I said, those scenes where it shows him, he says he retreats into his, his brain house or his mind, and he's doing all the calculations, and you see him going and all these calculations going across the screen. I said, I feel like that's my brain 24/7 trying to figure out what the next step is. But really, I think we're all on such shifting sands. You can't make a solid plan because
it's changing so quickly.
The landscape changes immediately.
Yeah.
I think I am working through accepting that I will not be touring internationally for quite a while. Even if it were to miraculously disappear tomorrow, the virus itself, the knock-on effect that it's had on our, airlines and our culture and our economy and people's fears and being in large gatherings, or, all of those things are going to be major influences and factors in touring internationally, especially when you live in New Zealand. It's not a matter of, oh, well, I'll just jump in a tour bus and drive around the States. It's, if you want to tour anywhere outside of New Zealand, you have to get on a long haul flight. So, that I've kind of had to try to, expect. It doesn't soften the blow, unfortunately. I thought it would, but, almost weekly I get another email saying that a tour in the future has been canceled. And I'm fully expecting it, but it still knocks you down a little bit, and you have a little cry. But I think that also realizing I have to accept that that's part of it, and I just have to allow myself to grieve over it. It's a loss, and everything that we're all going through right now is trauma. And with, of course, keeping that perspective, I mean, everything that we're all feeling is completely valid, but there's also the side to it that you go, there are people going through a living hell right now. And I am safe and healthy with my children in a beautiful country with really great leadership, and in a lovely home, and a safe place. And it puts things into perspective really quickly. That, at the end of the day, it's just a music career. Just all my hopes and dreams. But anyway, but you have to laugh or cry, either one.
You do. You got to keep your sense of humour.
Yeah.
Well, social media is an area where you've always been very active, so I guess you could be looking at that as something you could take up a notch even more, and it becomes even more important now.
Yeah, and I think I think we all are kind of trying to do this it's a coping mechanism to try to flip things into positives. And I mean, that's kind of always the way that my coping mechanism is to find kind of that silver lining. And when I look at, for me, there are a lot of pluses. I've never enjoyed, I love touring and performing for people, but I've never enjoyed being apart from my kids. I've never enjoyed, it's always been the most challenging thing about being a musician and a parent and living in New Zealand on the bottom of the world, is that, having to spend so much time away from my children and kind of making that work for our family has always been the real challenging balancing act, And so on that end, I love being home. I love being with my children. Although ask me at any other given time today when I was wearing headphones and looking for the Nurofen. Bless them. The noise levels have just gone up like 1 billion, eh?
Yeah.
But poor things, they're feeling that pent up energy as well.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, and I guess you're trying to find those positives and hold on to those, and I can still create, and I can still build even more, my online presence, and still connect with my fans and the people, my audience. I can still connect with them and bring joy to them, no matter where I am. I realize that we're all going to be moving heavily online, and I think that's actually going to get old pretty quickly. I'm already tired of looking at a screen for everything, to socialize with people, to do everything really at the moment, which I think is also a healthy thing. I think it's great that we are going to have to start pulling away we're going to want to start pulling away from so much online activity and have maybe more of a balance. And I guess I try to look at the fact that, while I won't be able to tour internationally for a while, probably, of course, everything's uncertain. But if that's the case, then I think it's going to be really, hopefully, great for local musicians all over the world. They're not competing with big overseas international acts coming in anymore. They are the acts. So I'm trying to look at the positives of, people wanting and craving music and entertainment when all of this, the lockdown lifts.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
And I really hope that means people are going to really want to connect with their local artists, because that's what they're going to have if they want a live music experience. And just embrace that. I mean, I live in a very small country with a small population, but New Zealanders have always been, my my largest audience, no matter where I am in the world, because I'm based here. So I think it's just trying to accept and then see how you can most embrace what the future is going to bring. The hard part is not knowing what the future is going to bring.
That's the point.
That's the hardest thing for all of us. Yeah.
Hey, talk about turning a negative into a positive. I caught your online spot at Willie Nelson's Luck Reunion Festival recently. Tell us about that experience. It must have taken a hell of a lot of work to get that organised in such a short space of time.
Oh, I can't believe they pulled it off. I literally got an email like 24 hours before. And, I was kind of dreading the day itself because I was devastated when, all of that. It literally happened the week before I was supposed to play the festival of my dreams. It's Willie Nelson's property. It's his private property. It's this exclusive festival that you have to enter a draw to even get a ticket, be able to buy a ticket. You enter this ballot. And it's on Willie Nelson's ranch. And the lineup was obviously him and his family and Chris Christopherson and Lucinda Williams. And it was my dream festival, basically. And when it became very clear that, it was the same week as South by Southwest, so all of my shows at South by Southwest were pulled, and then the Luck Reunion. And so, as the 19th approached, I thought, oh, God, that's going to be a hard day, just knowing that was the day it was supposed to go on. And the day before, they emailed saying, we're pulling this together. Everyone gets like a 10-minute slot. You get 2 or 3 songs, whatever you can fit in that time, and live stream. And so it was a whirlwind, especially because I live out in the country and have like the crappiest Wi-Fi. So I was really lucky. It was about 2 days before lockdown. So I was able to go to my local record store, Southbound Records, who are my distributors as well, and set up in their record shop, and my guitar player could come and accompany me. And we performed, and it was nerve-wracking just knowing, the pressure of kind of what if anything technical goes wrong, and I have a 10-minute window, and there's nothing like that adrenaline, but it was an amazing thing because, when we're not going to be able to perform live in front of an audience for quite a while. And that was the next best thing. You got that same adrenaline rush of knowing there were people watching, and it was truly a performance. And it wasn't till afterward that we found out there were over 100,000 people watching.
Wow. Our
set. I know. And like in the span of my 10-minute set, I gained like 400 new followers on my social media, just during that 10-minute window. And it's obviously grown in this knock-on effect since then. So it was such a injection of joy to be able to do that, and such a special experience. I mean, to be part of a lineup. I literally opened for Lucinda Williams. She was on right after me.
That's right.
And it's crazy. And Neil Young and Paul Simon, and it was just to be part of this incredible lineup, but kind of not part of it. But it like physically. So you do, again, that's kind of that silver lining or flipping negatives into positives.
Yeah.
The physical festival holds about 3,500 people in Texas. And of course, there's many stages going on at the same time. So, I could have had a couple hundred people. But instead, I sang to 100,000 people. So, yeah, you got to look at the good that can come out of that. Absolutely. As well. And people who, of course, were tuning in from all over the world, not just locally. So
it came together beautifully. It just streamed along nicely the whole way. It was magnificent.
It was such a special thing to be a part of, and it was kind of the first one, because since then obviously everyone's been pushed on indoors, and everybody's doing live streams, and there are online festivals happening literally every minute of the day. But that Luck reunion was kind of the first one, so it was really, really special to be a part of that.
Now let's talk about this new record, because it is out there still. The first thing that struck me about it when I heard it was the immediacy of it. There's no playing an album 2 or 3 times to get into the songs. These songs hit you right between the ears straight away. Was that a feeling you're aiming for?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the title Chickaboom, it was definitely like kind of encapsulating that ethos, I guess, of, I just wanted them to be really punchy and, no time for mucking around. It was like, almost like I do in my live shows, where, because I'm kind of one of those artists that, I'm under the radar. I'm not a high profile, well-known artist yet. So when I play a festival, I can't rest on my laurels or a previous reputation or have, all these fans. I'm normally going out there cold and nobody knows who I am. And my challenge is I need to win these people over and make them fans in the 40 minutes or the hour that I might have. And like you said, hit them between the eyes. And so you kind of pull out all the stops and go full tilt. And that's definitely how I kind of approached this album as well.
Very much a stripped down sound compared to Sassafras. Was that something you were looking for even before the songs were written, that you wanted to just get it right back to basics again?
Yeah, well, I actually went into it intentionally doing that. I wrote the album to be performed live with just kind of a trio, like drums, guitar, and voice, really. And I mean, the reasoning behind that was actually just, logistics of touring internationally. I was finding, I hit a wall with touring with 5 or 6 people from New Zealand every time I was flying my whole band, and it was just not sustainable. And I just thought, I need to find a way to do this sustainably, which is so funny to talk about now. Because, what? Yeah. Interesting conversations, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really kind of finding a way to tour sustainably and be able to deliver an album and a live show that matched that album. I didn't want to go out and perform with a 3-piece after, this huge full production album and people kind of expecting those sounds and coming to a gig and, oh, it's only a trio, Whereas if, Chickaboom, you're very much expecting that kind of rockabilly, stripped back Memphis trio vibe. And yeah, and I also just loved that it kind of got right back to, the song has to be punchy and it just showcases the vocals. You're not kind of having to fight to be heard above a huge production. It's just very much about hearing the songs and the vocals and the lyrics really clearly.
But by the same token, I'm sure you don't regret the bigger sound that you went for with Sassafras.
No, and I think I loved doing the Sassafras album as well. I kind of reached, I mean, it's a dream to be able to do these huge productions. I recently did a show with the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, and it's just an experience like no other as a live performer to have a 60-piece orchestra behind you, or doing the Sassafras tour with 9 or 10-piece band with horns and the whole works. It's a pretty amazing feeling as well. But again, it always kind of came back to finances and it being sustainable. And so, unfortunately, as well, maybe unfortunately and fortunately, as musicians, a lot of our creative choices are determined by finance.
Yeah.
But that can also really make for great creative choices and albums, because you have to get quite DIY and creative with what you have.
Now it clocks in at just over 26 minutes, which I think is fine. Just because you can squeeze 80 minutes onto a CD doesn't mean you should have to. Was it very much, very much a matter of just including the songs that fitted this project?
Yeah, I mean, we did have a couple more songs that we actually have in the can that weren't put on the album, simply because, when we looked at it as a whole, which I guess not a lot of people do these days, but I still do. I mean, my audience are very much into vinyl and, kind of that very throwback, golden age aesthetic, and so that for me, I've always kind of put out projects as a whole and as a whole experience, not as singles. And so yeah, it came down to kind of making those tough choices of like listening to it as a whole and going, actually, that one kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. It doesn't belong in the family. It'll be great maybe on another project, but yeah. So it was just kind of keeping it real, lean and mean.
Yep. One of the standout songs is Queenie Queenie, and I detect in that song a bit of a comment on the frustrations of seeing a lack of support for female country music artists.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's been a rough couple of years for females in country music. It's the lack of radio play. They had for the first time in their history last year, they reached a point where there were no females in the top 10 in the history of Billboard charts, which is crazy to think about. And they went an entire year without having a female have a number one song. So there are all these unspoken rules in country radio in the States that, you never play two females in a row, and you don't play too many females because you'll lose your listeners. And it's really crazy. And, a lot of people say, oh, well, radio's dead anyway. Streaming is taking over. Why is it so important? Well, that might be true of any other genre except for country music. In country music, radio is still king and very influential. Can make or break a career, really. So it's an important conversation to have, and I think slipping in a little tongue-in-cheek reference here and there helps spark those conversations.
Yeah, I believe you even had a bit of an issue with your categorization on Spotify.
Yeah, I can remember it being loaded by my distributors overseas, and the night before one of the songs rolled out, I believe it was like "Hey Bus Driver," a 10-ton truck, like pretty obvious country rockabilly songs. And I went in to just check that everything was in the back end of my Spotify, and it was listed under like blues rock. And I'm like, oh God, someone's made a mistake. And I went to change it, but by then it was too late. It was coming out, within 24 hours. And so I spoke to my manager and said, oh, that's really, I hope it doesn't screw things up. It should be listed under country and he said, oh no, they did that intentionally. And I said, they did it intentionally. Why? He goes, because if they put it under country, you won't get playlisted. And it's just this known thing, which, again, even though you kind of know it's happening, it's a kick in the guts when it does, it's very, very, very challenging and really frustrating for females in country music.
Now you had Delaney Davidson producing you, whose own music thrives on that stripped back, sparse feel. So I guess this would have been a piece of cake for him.
Absolutely. When I, when I wanted to do kind of a really, he's a very, he knows how to make the most out of the most frugal of materials, I thought, well, if anyone can make something great out of very little, that's Delaney Davidson for sure. I mean, yeah, he's pretty much the king at that.
Lovely tribute to the great Mavis Staples on there as well. Obviously a major inspiration to you.
Yeah, I love Mavis, and I actually, the last live show that I saw was at Womadelaide at a month ago. God, a month ago, like in a different lifetime.
Seems like forever, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. So my very last live show was Mavis Staples at Womadelaide. I finished my set and raced over to the main stage and got to see her perform that was, I guess, oh gosh, my fourth or fifth time seeing her. I've had the honor of opening for her twice. Yeah, it was, if I had to choose my final concert to see for a while, that was pretty, you couldn't get better than Mavis.
And you've made steps towards getting the family band back together with Brother Jay involved in the record?
Yeah, and that was another really big thing that made a huge difference this past kind of 18 months, year and a half of touring, was the decision to have my brother tour with me internationally. It's, when you're on tour, it's quite an isolating and, challenging lifestyle, being away from all your loved ones. And so having kind of part of your village with you it just makes such a huge difference mentally and for your mental health and just having that person there that has your back, unconditionally. And there's just nothing like sharing a stage with somebody who you've been on stage with for over 30 years. There's that kind of silent communication that happens with a look. And there's nothing like the blend of, those blood harmonies. So yeah, that was a huge factor in having Jay. He's always been involved in the writing of most of my albums, all of my albums. He's had, co-writes with me, produced a lot of my past albums. So he's heavily involved in my music. But it was kind of taking that extra step of having him physically involved, and really kind of bringing it more heavily into the Chickaboom project.
Yeah. So you co-wrote some songs with Jay, some with Delaney, and some on your own. Is the songwriting procedure, was it a little bit different co-writing with Delaney as it was with Jay?
Yeah, it's always really different because I think writing with a sibling, you don't have to be precious about anything. You know that you can say or do anything, and if he sends me an idea, I'm like, nah, or that needs more work, buddy, or he'll be like, oh yeah, you could work a little bit harder on that line. It's not doing it for me, and you don't have to have that, it's just so open, and comfortable and honest. Whereas when you write with anyone, I mean, Delaney and I are really close friends, but no matter how close you are and how many co-writers you work with, there's always that element that you're sensitive to another artist because, you're pouring your heart out. You're so exposed and raw in the songwriting process that you have to be a little more sensitive and walk a little tenderly, And so, yeah, it's a very different dynamic than writing with my brother who, I don't care. And he doesn't care either. It's just like, Nah, sorry. And there's just no offense taken,
Yeah.
So it's a different dynamic. But I love writing with both of them. I love writing with Delaney. He and I are very different personalities, very different approaches to music. But we write. He works very similarly to me, though. We both have a really hustling work ethic, and when we write together, he said it really well once. I read somewhere he was interviewed about writing with me, and he said writing with Tami is like moving really quickly down a river. Things happen really quickly. We connect, and it's just like, things kind of flow out, and it's pretty fast and furious, and really satisfying and productive. It's great when you find your people. I don't co-write with a lot of people, and I mean I have co-written with a lot of people in the past, but I think every songwriter knows when you find that co-writer that you hit that balance and that chemistry. It's really special when you find that co-writer that you just click with.
I guess it is practically impossible to talk to you now about upcoming plans, but this album deserves a proper launch. Would you look at relaunching it down the track?
Yeah, we have been talking about that. My label and my management have plans to relaunch. Of course, I've got international tours coming up, kind of the later half of the year, kind of September, October, November. That a lot of things rescheduled, and but of course. Who knows? Who knows? The plan, I mean, that's what we do. You plan and you go forward as if it's going to happen, knowing that it may not.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop the fact that you need to keep moving forward.
Absolutely.
So we keep moving forward, and we do have plans to relaunch. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
You're meant to be in France right now, aren't you?
I am. I'm supposed to be in Paris last night.
Oh, goodness.
Thanks for the reminder.
Well, I'm sitting here at the moment looking at 2 tickets to Tami Neilson at the Caravan Music Club, which unfortunately I'm not going to get to use now, but I'm going to hang on to them.
Bless your heart.
I'm going to hold them as a token of hope that you do make your way over here before too long.
I hope so too. And that I really do hold out hope that before even anywhere else in the world, that New Zealand and Australia will be opening their borders to each other before anyone else.
Yeah.
That's the hope. That's the real hope, is that I'll be able to be touring New Zealand and Australia at least. Before I even if I can't get any farther overseas. And there are worse things in the world than having Australian and New Zealand audiences for the rest of my days.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on it anyway. It's a magnificent album, and it's my wake up in the morning music at the moment. It gets me up and going in my days of hibernation here.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you.
And great to speak to you again. And hopefully this will all blow over before we know it, and we'll see you back on our stages.
Oh, fingers crossed.
Thanks, Tami.
Thank you.
You take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.